So I know Wendy's got one literally burning. Did you want to talk through your deal first, if that's okay, Wendy?
Yeah, absolutely. So we've been looking around at the apart hotel model, and this deal came across about 3 or 4 weeks ago. Essentially, it's a small hotel. It's got 6 letting bedrooms, and it's got a bar and restaurant on the ground floor. Now, we weren't particularly looking to run a bar and restaurant, but it is running very well. So the idea is that we will take it on as it is and operate it for a period of time. And then, we may turn the ground floor into rooms, depending on how things go. The rooms are needing a little bit sprucing up. The building itself is great, so it's not going to take much to be able to increase the room rates, and that's how we're looking to add value and increase the business that way. So it's very exciting.
Amazing. And is it purely leisure? It's up in Scotland, I presume, is it, or is it?
It is, yes. It's in the east of Scotland in a little village called Markinch. It's right next to a railway station, and it's got a mixture. So there are a lot of companies in the area, so there will be the opportunity for some corporate stays, and it's also for leisure as well. Being close to the railway station, you're an hour to Edinburgh on the train, a bit longer to Glasgow, and an hour and a half up north. So it's quite a central location if you're coming to kind of visit the area. And Fife's got some wonderful golf courses and lots of other sort of touristic attractions. So I think it's going to be, it's going to be good.
God, so there is another up north, isn't there? I mean, I just presumed that everything in this country is up north as far as I'm concerned, as I'm literally on the south coast. But interesting. So was this kind of just a straightforward up for sale, normal valuation, or are you looking, obviously you've talked about a refurb, are you looking at sort of adding value in different ways? What was your sort of plan, and what attracted you to it, I suppose?
Yeah, so I guess what attracted us to it was the opportunity to do, we're doing a lease option on it. So we're going to lease it for 18 months and then purchase at the end of that period, giving us the opportunity to increase the income and its value. It's being operated at the moment not particularly well. There's great opportunity there to increase the restaurant and bar side of the business, or we may sublet that part of the business out to an operator. We're undecided at the moment, but there's also space downstairs to potentially have another 2 bedrooms. So we'll add value by sprucing up the rooms and increasing the nightly rate. That's the first opportunity we see. There's potentially opportunity to add a further 2 rooms to the offering, and then to rent out the bar and restaurant space, or convert that into rooms. See how that goes.
Amazing.
But yeah, I mean, ideally we were looking to do similar to what you did, complete apart hotel, but because the food and beverage offering is running okay at the moment, and there is opportunity to improve that, we thought we'd give that a go. We've got other apart hotels in the pipeline which are more similar to the model that you did. We've got a 15-bed one that we're getting. It should go through mid-April, and this one, probably 6 of the rooms will be knocked into 3 rooms, and giving us that bigger space to put in the kind of kitchen type facilities that you're offering in your space as well. So that one will probably take us a few months to get that kind of works done. We're debating whether we operate it over the summer as is and then do the work in the winter. Don't know whether what the best way is, but we're still working through that.
Amazing. Gosh, lots going on. And guys, do feel free to jump in and ask any questions. But did you want to just run through the numbers on this one? So obviously, as an option agreement, that's really interesting. And I know a lot of people are very interested in that model.
Yeah, so we're basically, we've agreed what we're going to purchase it for. So we're purchasing it for 395,000. We're putting down a deposit of 25,000. And in Scotland, because it works slightly differently, we are concluding the purchase on Friday, along with taking on the lease option for it. Whereas I think in England there's a bit more flexibility, as in you're not committing to buy, where we are committing to buy. We've done projections and the future valuation. So we see the valuation, a business valuation on this property just now at about 660. And with the increase in income that we're projecting, we're hoping to get that to just round about £1 million.
And how come you've managed to get it so cheap? So you basically, yeah, you've got it sort of very, very cheap.
Yeah, I think it's being sold by somebody who hasn't really put much attention into it and is thinking more he's selling the building rather than the business that goes with it. And they just want a quick sale. They just want it out their hair. But they have been able to do a bit of flexibility with us over the timescale of that purchase.
So are they currently living there and running it, and they're looking to move elsewhere, or?
They actually operate several other businesses, and so they purchased this 1.5 years ago. It's not really part of what they offer. They had a play with it. It's not for them, so they just want to shift it. They're expanding their chain of supermarkets, and so that's where they want their focus to be.
Amazing. Paul, I can see he's battling with the mute and the unmute.
I am battling all my life, battling with technology ever since it arrived. Just want to kind of focus down a wee bit for people who may not be in Scotland to kind of understand the Scottish system and touch slightly on what Wendy was saying. So it's slightly more complex than England, or differently complex than England, in terms of in Scotland you can't do a lease option, or you can't do an option on a residential property. Actually, that's an exaggeration. There's no law against it, but you'll find it very difficult to find a solicitor that will do an option on a residential property in Scotland. But you can do options on commercial properties in Scotland, and this one of Wendy sounds like it is a commercial property.
It is.
So the way she set this up is the way they've chose to set it up, but they could have set this up with 2 documents. People get confused with a lease option and think it's 1 document. It's actually in an ideal situation 2 documents. 1 document is a lease. So in this case, that would be a commercial lease, right? And you could make that lease as short or as long as you wanted to, if both parties agreed to it. And then there's an option to buy. Now, we also quite often in Scotland, because we don't use the lease option system on residential properties, we have what's called delayed completion, which in all intents and purposes gives you the same result as an option. The only difference is that you're committed to buy it. And that sounds like what you actually went for, Wendy, is you have went for what's called a delayed completion rather than an option. Because if you had an option on the property, you would have an option whether you chose, because it's commercial, you could have an option on it. So you would have an option at the end of the period of deciding whether you wanted to buy it or not. And in an ideal situation, given that you're going into something new and you don't know how well it's going to work, your solicitor should have probably advised you to go for a lease option agreement rather than a lease delayed completion.
Yeah,
Is there a reason you didn't do that?
Yeah, it was discussed, but the owners of the property, they weren't up for that. They basically wanted the property sold, but they were prepared to give us a bit of flexibility on how we paid it. So this is why we've ended up with this agreement. In terms of the kind of risk, if this wasn't to work as a hotel, many years ago, this property was 2 semi-detached houses, 4-bedroomed houses. So the option would be to refurb back to housing and sell it on as that. So we kind of we see exits and opportunities for this building with, regardless.
So one of the ways, I don't know if you've gone as far as putting the blood on the paper yet, but signed it in blood yet. But one of the ways that you could kind of structure this deal is you could say to them, look, we maybe want to put planning consent in for taking the restaurant space back into some form of commercial housing, right? Whether that be hotel, park hotel, serviced accommodation, whatever. And what we would like to do is we'd like to put a condition in that we're acquiring it subject to planning. Now, if you did that, you would be giving yourself essentially an exit door. So that if it didn't work, you could then say, well, look, we didn't get the planning that we wanted, because subject to planning is a really interesting way to do something. Because what you tend to do is when you do subject to planning, there's a clause that goes into it, and it's to the satisfaction of the purchaser is the clause. So let's say that I hypothetically buy a property off of you, and I say it's subject to planning, right? And if I can get planning for 6 houses, then I'll buy this. And you say, well, that's fine, because I think you're going to get planning for 6 houses. But there's a wee clause in the back of it that says subject to the purchaser's satisfaction. And I could say, well, actually, I got planning for 6 houses, but I wanted them to be green houses and they're blue houses, so I'm not going to buy it. So if you want, if you haven't signed in blood yet, there's still an opportunity to kind of put an exit door in there, which would essentially, in legal terms, still give you an option on the property rather than 100% commitment to buy it.
Yeah, I can certainly have a chat with them today.
And what about being assignable as well? Because that's another way that if you could, because you're in between, you could still assign it and somebody else could come in and purchase it. I don't know if that's allowed in Scotland. We can do it down here.
Yes, you can do a signing in Scotland. It's an option to sell. One's an option to purchase, the other one's an option to sell. So quite often, if I'm doing kind of back-to-back deals where I know that I'm going to sell a property on, trade a property essentially, because a lot of what I did in the early days was trading property. So if I know I'm going to trade a property, then I can get an assignment in the agreement, and I can do what's called a back-to-back deal, which means that I buy it at, say, 11 o'clock and I sell it at 1 minute past 11, and it's paid for by the purchaser's funds and not by my funds. So therefore, I never have to part with anything except for some legal fees. So the interesting thing about Scotland is people sometimes go into afraid of the kind of Scottish system, and it's a much more. I heard an English solicitor describe it once as a more civilised system, because we don't tend to get gazumping here in Scotland. We tend to kind of, once you've made a commitment to buy a property, but there is I don't know whether you want to have a wee chat offline at some point, Wendy, but there's 100 ways to kind of to structure a deal that an unsophisticated seller wouldn't understand, that you're still leaving yourself an option to come out of the deal if you don't want to do it.
Yeah. Okay, that'd be great.
Okay.
Yeah. Exciting. I'm really looking forward to to following that up. So inherently, is the plan then to just literally take it over, give it a bit of a light zhuzh, and then potentially either do better with the restaurant and bar, or I quite liked that subletting it out, because it really reminded me of the Premier Inn, what is it, Harvester model? No, it's not Harvester, isn't it? Whatever it is. But I really love that. You know, the hotel are experts in hotels, and then they've just, you know, tied up with a you know, a restaurant that are good at restauranting, and I'm just loving that kind of collaboration. So yeah, bringing anyone in.
Yeah, well,
I'm not sure that we have GG in Scotland, or I'm not sure that we have that in Scotland. That's a
Well, you did a bit of GGing this morning, Paul, when you were making your face ready for the TV.
To make my face ready for TV would take a lot more than that, I think, to be honest.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Sorry, Wendy.
Forgot what I was going to say.
Yeah, no. So you're just literally just getting going with it, are you? Is it just a light refurb, or are you literally gonna do anything before the summer, or?
No, I think so back to what you were saying about subletting the restaurant. I mean, you know, I am at risk of creating with this project, and that's not what I'm in this for. So it's I guess we'll see how easy it is to manage from a distance, that side of it. But I suspect the easiest way is going to be to sublet it to a third party to run that side of it.
Amazing. And Robin's got a great question. Said, Wendy, would you be given a valuation based on the commercial income? And if so, how do they value that based on short-term lets? That's a great question, Robin.
Well, this is one of those questions I'll probably ask back to somebody else. The valuers, it's like a dark art, isn't it? So I have been round the valuers in Scotland saying, you know, asking this question. I think I've asked you, Emma, how did you get your valuation? There doesn't seem to be any one answer, and it depends how they feel on the day, what the weather's like, and all that kind of stuff. I know of someone recently who got their apart hotel valued at 10 times EBITDA. So I have been calculating mine based on 5 times, just to be really, you know, to kind of give myself plenty of room. And the valuer who's doing the valuation sort of said, well, yes, it'll be about that, and then we add this, we take away that, we take that factor in, and you know, there is no defined way of doing it. It depends on the area, it depends on the type of clientele, it depends on, you know, what else is available. There's all sorts of factors they take into account. But I think as a rule of thumb, if you go at 5 times EBITDA, because in this industry, I think it's 6 to 7. I don't know how the Sweeney brothers got their 10 times, but I've been trying to find out who that valuer is. But yeah, I don't know what your experience is, Paul, of valuers commercially in Scotland.
I love commercial properties for that very reason. I think everybody in the world thinks they can value a residential property, you know, because of things like Zoopla and Rightmove. And what I like about commercial property is that everybody can't do your job. Although there's more and more people trying, I must admit, one of the reasons I'm getting out of my job. But it's interesting. Commercial property is very interesting, and especially hybrid commercial property, which is what you've got, which is a hybrid commercial property, which is kind of venturing into a couple of different industries at the same time. So that'd be a really interesting one to value. I think I don't like to I very rarely like to play my 30 years in the business card, right? But I'm going to play my 30 years in the business card. I think we are very privileged in that we can work with valuers because they understand that we understand what we're talking about. So when so I'll give you an example. We had a valuer look at a commercial property in November, and he came back with a kind of rough valuation. I tend to have conversations with valuers rather than employ them and then get a bit of paper at the end. I don't really work that way with anybody. And he came back with a figure, and I love the way he put it. I was thinking, Paul, of £650,000, and I said, well, if I was you, I'd think a lot harder. And we came back, and after we presented 1 or 2 things to him, which again, if you want to have a chat, Wendy, right? He came back with a valuation, £8,000 over £1 million, which was a very odd valuation, £1,008,000. I don't know what the £8,000 was for. Maybe it was his fee. I'm not sure. But that was the valuation. So that's a substantial £400,000 difference in valuation by being able to present to the valuer reasons why. Right. And that's what I like about commercial property. I mean, it'd be very hard to move the house, the price of a house, a residential property, by £400,000. That would be, even for me, I would consider that difficult. But to do that in commercial property isn't as difficult as you think. And it's about working with valuers, but bringing them evidence that they haven't perhaps looked at or thought about. And then kind of like qualifying that evidence and bringing in some expertise to show that it can be done. So in commercial property, it's rarely a good idea just to have a valuer, you know, give a valuer a blank sheet to just go in and value something, because they're going to miss things that you know about that property or potential with that property that they don't know. And why should they? And I think it's one of the issues with people not used to being in commercial property, dealing with commercial property. They're not going to get the best valuation for that property because they're just going to go to the expert. Well, I would argue that the expert on any property is you, because you own it. or you're the purchaser of it. So don't presume that somebody's got some letters after their name and they're the expert. You're the expert. You should know more about that property than they ever do. And I probably know the exact property that you bought, strangely enough, because I know that area quite well. So we'll have a wee chat offline. But commercial property is really interesting. You want a really good valuation for commercial property. Don't rely on someone else to do the work. It's your job.
Yeah, I basically produced a business plan and shared that with the valuer, and I did have those conversations beforehand as to why I thought this is what the property was worth, and he's concurred, so that's good.
And I think that's really key to pick up if you know, other people don't understand or know this, that you know, exactly as Paul has said, and what you've done, Wendy, is to have this whole kind of, you know, you're not just going to your mortgage broker and asking them for a valuation. It is with this complete supporting documentation, everything that's in there. And it's a much bigger, you know, sort of project, so to speak, that you are bringing to the table, so to speak. But yeah, I think from our perspective, we've valued ours like bottom up, top down, side in, left in, kind of every which way, and pretty much they've all come to a very similar level. So that's been you know, been interesting. So yeah, so obviously you've got your plan of how to sort of increase it to get to this level that you need, but obviously the actual purchase price is potentially quite low in comparison to that. So exciting.